That didn't work. Ay. Okay. It's like you have to record the meeting. Join now in the classroom. Hit that. Okay, here we go. Walk like an Egyptian. Go. Okay. Hi, Pastry. Hello again. It's Chef Gigi. Welcome. Thank you for coming to class. This week, we're starting the week off talking about dessert presentations. And so all the live lessons this week will be on dessert presentations, which have changed dramatically over the last century. Now, the last century in 20 years, or last 120 years or so. The golden age of culinary, as you guys know, Escoffier and Carême, sort of from the 1880s through the 1920s, which also affected the world of pastry and baking. So the golden age of culinary was through those years. Food was entertainment at that time. Fine dining was entertainment. So it's challenging for us in today's world sometimes to realize the impacts of the web, social media on the arts, and how this has impacted the arts. Everything is now much more immediate. Instagram, YouTube. You can go right to these sources and not have to do a lot of research, other than clicking in a title and doing a search, and you can find music, you can find the culinary arts, you can find dance, all the arts, from any era. So it's also really great, and it's educational. And so I highly suggest you use this time for that kind of research that you can do while we're not able to be in the kitchen. We can strengthen other areas of our of our knowledge, if you will. But dating back to sort of, again, the golden age of culinary, you have, well, I just have some old cookbooks. I couldn't find my Titanic cookbook, but I have a beautiful book. It's packed away somewhere. So hold on to your things, because they're time capsules. But anyway, I have a Titanic recipe book with menus from the Titanic. It's amazing, because you see that even third class had about 8 courses of food plus 2 dessert options. And if you look back at that time, they had nowhere near the technology that we had today. Things we don't think twice about, and things that have changed our industry. For example, a lot of you go to jobs where all of the mise en place, all of the vegetables, the cheese, are pre-shredded, pre-cut. So it makes our jobs so much easier, but it's also impacted us, as in we have less jobs. This is one old menu I have. I like to collect, well, I guess they're artifacts of a trade. But even this at a college in California shows the extent that they serve the students of just chicken consomme en tasse a la royale, crab legs sauteed under glass, so they were steamed. Souvenir of frozen eggnog with special cakes. That was part of the dessert menu, and they would take it away with them. But to fast forward on here, Pepperidge Farm, for example, we don't maybe think twice if we're buying cookies or something from Pepperidge Farm, but that started out as a real farm, and real recipes, just as Toll House chocolate chips started out as a real place. Another classic, an American classic, and I can do 2 classes on these. I mean, you could do a whole series of food history at many colleges and universities. They actually have a whole semester on food history because everybody finds it fascinating. So those of you who also want to detour, go back to college, you can, which is what I did at one point, you can implement all of your knowledge in food into other areas of study. So anyway, Joy of Cooking, an American classic. This is an old copy. This is my grandmother's copy. And so these are artifacts, but you can see how dessert presentations and hotline presentations changed. Best of the Bake Off is another classic, 1950s. In the 1950s, what was happening? A lot of world changes, just like is happening today. You guys are going to look back on this time for sure and be able to trace historical changes. And that's true of maybe any time, but it's especially true of this moment we're all living through. So, but the 1950s was a lot the same. We had come out of World War II, and it changed the whole world. It changed Europe. It changed America. It changed our eating habits. Soldiers coming back from Europe brought back what was considered new and exotic tastes for things like pizza. This is this is an Italian cookbook, all in Italian, by the way, too. love your things. But anyway, they brought back taste for Italian food. They brought and German food and things that were considered very exotic for the time. So they brought those. They were stationed in Europe, and they ate the local foods, and they brought back interest in those flavors to America. And so where there's, cause and demand, what is it? Need and demand. People, and then new immigrants started coming over. We started to become much more diverse. Although Italians were immigrating, the Irish immigrated, and we had many influences beforehand. Other cultures weren't being looked at. So sort of fast forward going into the 1960s, which is these cookbooks were published by a very reputable magazine source called Time Life. Many of you have heard of it. And in the 60s, what happened? We really started expanding, the world started expanding in knowledge about each other and world events, civil rights, which were always there, but the public as a whole wasn't being exposed to it. So through the 1950s and 60s, television also started impacting these things, and people became aware of world events, like the civil rights movement. And so, but those things impacted food as well as other arts, dance, music, and food. So Time Life went around the world, photojournalists who were very, very good journalists. They documented a very famous picture of the Vietnam War, which helped change the feeling in America towards some of the things that were happening in that war, or towards the movement of the war, of shooting a man in Vietnam, right, on the street. A very famous, iconic photo. But so these were sort of, again, you had 2 books going with this Time Life series, and they had every country in the world. So this is showing sheep herders in Spain and Portugal. But then along with that, you would have a cookbook to accompany it. So again, this was really a novelty for the time. This is your grandparents' time, maybe, or great grandparents, I don't know. But these recipes were considered quite exotic for the time. In today's world, today's America, we're not thinking much about that if we grew up in this time, because we've already been exposed to a great deal more diversity, which is great. We've been exposed to a lot more flavors, maybe. Although San Francisco, New York, Chicago, maybe to a lesser degree, because Chicago is very meat and potatoes oriented. It's the Midwest, which is also great. It's but every place has a regional flavor, right? This is what they talk about in food planning: regional flavors, from Italy to Africa, to the Latin Americas, to the Caribbean. You're going to have very distinct flavors, which learning is a lifetime event. You will never stop learning. So that's for sure. I mean, every single country has microclimates and microcosms of food. I don't have all the accompanying books anymore, but for when I was trying to collect them back when used bookstores were still around, which they aren't, but this for the time was a big deal. We have an Ethiopian restaurant in San Francisco, and we have a few African restaurants, but because we have a lot of immigrants here, which is great. So anyway, you don't have that all over the place. You have Chinese cooking, and you had some pastries as well. You would learn about what cultures use pastries. Not everybody eats sweets the way we do. And so that was going as far as that. And then, so I was talking about also microclimates or regional cooking. You also had, like, San Francisco. You do have it today, but these are all old San Francisco specific cookbooks. And you guys, having lived in San Francisco now, you would even recognize, even though they're very old, you would recognize some of the addresses. New Joe's was a famous restaurant. This guy here, a local character, and so he had a grill, Joe's, and then he started a small chain. It was Italian American cooking. So there's a movie called Big Night, and it talks about the 1950s and how two Italian brothers came to America and wanted to open a restaurant. And one of them wanted to stay completely true and pure to Italian cooking. And his brother was sort of like seduced by the bright lights of America and Las Vegas and wanted to appeal to American tastes. American tastes meaning really Italian American food. So Italian American food at this point has progressed to things like the Olive Garden. Chipotle is not real Mexican food. I'm not saying don't go out and enjoy it, but it's not the real thing. It's become Americanized. Let me see. Panda Express is not real Chinese food, but we love it. It's the #1 chain in America. And so that's fast forwarding us up into, so again, this is Italian American cooking, sort of the 1970s. I'm going to stop this here now and continue with plating in the 70s and 80s and 90s and thousands for pastry. Thank you guys for watching. Okay, bye-bye.